What's up, guys? I'm BTC. With this year's Archives event, there are some new challenge modes with achievements that can be a little tricky to accomplish. Today, I'm going to go over some of the best strategies, the best heroes to use, and the heroes that you should be avoiding. Also, I have a whole bunch of Overwatch Archives event loot box codes that I'm going to be giving away. More information on that at the end of the video. Each of these new challenge modes takes place in a previous Archives event mission with a bunch of special rules in place. To start with, a general tip for the Storm Rising and the Retribution events. If one of the Talon Assassins jumps on your teammate, use Quick Melee to free your teammate and to stun the Talon Assassin. For some reason, a lot of people don't know this and they just try to attack it. Use Quick Melee, you'll instantly knock it off, and then your team can finish it. There are 3 challenge modes, and we're going to start with the easiest and move up to the most difficult. The Storm Rising challenge is by far the easiest, and when done properly, you should be able to just roll right through it without any problems at all. In fact, the most difficult part of this challenge is finding other players that will actually listen and use the proper strategy. The special rules for this challenge is that the enemies will deal an AoE damage per second to all the players that are nearby. The total damage is 25 per second, and it will stack whenever you have multiple enemies nearby. So because of this, a lot of players will try to keep their distance, and they'll try to have a long-range type of team comp. And while this can work, it is effective somewhat, it's also really slow because in some areas you have to wait for the enemies to come to you. And the thing is, there is a much better strategy, which is to just completely ignore the AoE damage and just slam right through the enemies. Because the enemies, for the most part, have a very low amount of health, you can take them out in 1 second or less in some cases when you get nearby. Especially if you have a Reinhardt and a Brig and maybe a Reaper or something or a Roadhog that are all just charging into a group of enemies, they just get absolutely obliterated in almost no time at all. So that AoE damage really doesn't take time to build up. On top of that, Brigida's Inspire passive healing will completely heal your entire team. And because you're taking damage at least a little bit almost all the time, Brigida can build her ultimate incredibly fast. In one match, I was playing as Roadhog, and I had something like 40 to 50,000 damage taken, which meant that my team's Brigida had her ultimate up for almost the entire game mode. Almost the entire thing, my team had armor, because we just kept getting healed constantly by her, and she just kept getting her ultimate. You could use Lucio to try to offset the AoE damage with his AoE healing, but it doesn't quite work as well, plus he doesn't have AoE attacks like Brigida does, and the Sound Barrier ultimate doesn't really work as well in this game mode. Of course, you will have some players that will whine and complain, saying that Brig is not good for this game mode. They have no idea what they're talking about, so just ignore them. I have steamrolled through this game mode using Brig numerous times. It is easy mode with Brig as your healer in this. So some of the other characters that you can use that are going to be really good are Reinhardt and Roadhog. Having them right alongside with Brigida, you can just constantly heal them and keep building your ultimate. Reinhardt can swing for pretty much the whole time. You really don't have to worry about any of the damage from the enemies. If he does get into a little bit of danger, then he can just raise his shield, and almost immediately everybody gets filled back up to full. As for the DPS role, for that 4th character, you can, for the most part, use almost whatever you want, but one of the characters that does seem to work really well is Reaper. Some other characters that also work well in that 4th role is going to be Mercy if you want a little bit of extra healing, but for the most part, she's not even going to be healing. Instead, she's just going to be using her damage amp on either Brig or Reinhardt, and you just hold the damage for pretty much the whole thing. Also, being able to res a little bit faster can be helpful in some of those situations. McCree is also a very good choice for dealing with some of the other special enemies that you might have to deal with. Sigma can also be used. He has some pretty good stuff in here, and also does decent damage as well. And Bastion, of course, but you have to make sure that Bastion stays with the team. He can't just kind of sit off by himself. The only part where Bastion is really good is towards the end when you're on the payload, and he can just kind of sit there and do his own thing and damage everybody. Another kind of honorable mention for a character is Zarya. she will have full 100% damage charge for the entire match, but she doesn't really do quite as good as Roadhog does. Some of the characters you want to avoid for this challenge mode is going to be Tracer, Diva, Pharah, Hammond, Doomfist, Zenyatta, Genji, and Widow. A lot of these characters just don't quite have the damage that you need in order to do this strategy, or they just don't really provide enough kind of synergy with the rest of the strategy. Basically, you want something that is essentially mini goats, and if you do that, you will just roll through this entire game mode with almost no effort at all. It's super easy. Moving on to the second challenge for the Uprising mission, the special rules here are that enemy barriers are invulnerable. The barriers themselves will not be destroyed. However, there are still things that you can do to get around the barriers, and of course, you can use Sombra to shut them down completely. The best characters to use for this are going to be Torbjorn, Orisa, Bastion, and Mercy. Essentially, what you would have is Orisa, Bastion, and Mercy just kind of sit in one spot using the barrier, and Mercy will damage boost the Bastion, and you destroy lots of stuff. Torbjorn takes kind of a flanking role with this, where you just run out and you just use your right-click attack on all of the different bots, and as soon as some of the special shielded barrier enemies appear, you run behind them. One of two things is going to happen. Either they are going to continue facing the rest of your team, at which point you just destroy them very easily, or they will turn around to attack you, at which point the Bastion, who is being damage boosted by Mercy, will shred them in a matter of seconds. So either of these will work. However, there's something extra that you can also do, which is with Torbjorn's ultimate Molten Core. This lava effect will damage all of the enemies even if they have a barrier in the way. It will go underneath them and still deals damage, and will take them out very, very quickly. This is particularly effective towards the end of the match, towards the end of the game mode, with all of the Bastions in Sentry mode. You can just throw this over there, and it will destroy them. You really don't even have to put too much effort into it. On top of that, Torbjorn's turret will also be dealing constant damage, and it's really good for dealing with the little guys. If you don't want to use Torbjorn or Bastion, some other DPS that work quite well are going to be Soldier 76 and Sombra. Again, one of them would need to be on that flanking role to go around the back. If it's Sombra, then you can just hack any of the enemy Omnics, and they completely shut down for 4 or 5 seconds. The barrier goes away, you can easily destroy them, and then towards the end of the round, where you have all the Orisa barriers, if you use EMP, not only will it shut down all the Omnics, but it will also get rid of those invulnerable barriers, so then you can just easily destroy them. Any of these 4 DPS work very well. Some of the characters that you want to avoid in this game mode is Diva, Widow, Zarya, Hammond, Winston, and Doomfist. They're just not really all that effective. The third and most difficult of these challenges is for the Retribution event. The special rules are that damaging enemies will heal other enemies. This is not a small amount of healing either. This is an incredibly large amount of healing. It is a powerful ability. If several players on your team are attacking different enemies, they will constantly heal each other to full almost instantly. It makes it very difficult. Before I get into the specifics of this challenge, there's a general tip that also works really well for this game mode, and that's towards the end. You can cut out a nice chunk of the end of this game mode by just running through the art room. It's this room right here. When you get here after defeating the Heavy, if all 4 of your players simply run all the way through to the other side, the doors will immediately close behind you, and all of the enemies that fall down from the ceiling and the special enemy that spawns inside there, you don't have to deal with them. They just all despawn, and you don't have to deal with them. You completely cut that out, and then you go right into the final event of the map. So that's just kind of a little general tip for this event game mode, which just makes it a little bit easier. In some cases where the team is just kind of confused and you have people attacking different enemies, it is often a good idea to just stop attacking yourself. Just stop attacking, let your teammate continue to attack, they'll take out theirs, and then you can focus on another one. It seems kind of weird, but honestly, not attacking can sometimes be the best thing to do in this particular game mode. Having said that, there are a few far more effective strategies that you could try instead. The first is using Zenyatta. You have the Discord debuff, you can very clearly mark an enemy, and then everybody focuses on that one. The best strategy that I found using this is don't try to put the debuff on an enemy that's in the middle of a group of other enemies, because you're just going to end up hitting them instead. Instead, what you should do is try to mark the one that's on the far side, whether it's on the right or the left. Just start on one side and then move your way from left to right or from right to left and take out each enemy one at a time. That can be very effective. And you also get the bonus of doing extra damage because of the debuff. Another thing is with Ana. She has the Bionade, which will provide an anti-heal on the enemies. In this case, you can just hit a whole bunch of enemies, and then they can't heal each other, and you can just all take them all out at the same time, and it makes it super easy. The problem with this is that the Bionade is on a decently long cooldown, so you can't rely on it constantly. It's good for groups, but, you know, there are more effective strategies. With McCree, he does very good damage. Usually, you can get 1 or 2 hits on criticals, combined with a little extra damage from somebody else, and you'll just take out enemies super, super fast. Also, his ultimate allows you to take out a big group of enemies all at the same time, instantly, and you don't have to worry about them healing because they just go down in one hit. This is particularly effective at the end of the match when you have a whole bunch of the guys that have the enforcers with that kind of very strong shotgun type attack, and you have a whole bunch of them. Rather than using the high noon on the heavies, you can use this on a whole bunch of them, and it just makes the fight way, way easier. And then, of course, you have Hanzo, who's able to one-hit most of the enemies in this anyways, and again, they can't heal if they get taken out in one hit. However, he also has the ultimate, which you do not want to use unless it's just like a heavy by itself. You could use his ultimate, but if you use Hanzo's dragons on a group of enemies, then what's going to happen is, rather than eliminating them all, you're just going to end up healing them all to full. Unless, of course, Ana hits them with a Bionade first, then you can use the dragons, but otherwise, just use his normal attack, and you'll easily take out lots of enemies. Some other characters that work quite well in this, if you want to swap out Ana, you can put in Mercy and have that damage boost on the McCree or the Hanzo, and make it even easier to one-hit lots of enemies. You can use Widow as well instead of Hanzo, because she can also land those one-hits, but she doesn't quite have the total DPS for some of the bigger enemies that Hanzo has. So she works, but Hanzo's a little bit better. And then, of course, Tracer will also work. That's good for just kind of focusing down a single target very quickly. And her ultimate is also good at taking out several enemies because it deals a large amount of damage all instantly. They don't have time to heal. For the other challenges, I mentioned lists of characters that were just generally not all that effective. For this game mode, avoiding certain characters is way more important because they make it incredibly difficult, or in some cases just outright impossible to finish this game mode. And that's going to be any character with AoE type attacks. You also want to avoid any AoE abilities, which is why Hanzo's ultimate should only be used in certain situations. Now, there are certain AoE type stuff like Diva's ult, Junkrat's ult, or Tracer's ult that do massive amounts of damage right away, and those are okay. But in general, you want to avoid anything that deals AoE damage, because when you hit multiple enemies, what ends up happening is you just heal them all to full. So I was playing one of these matches with a Reinhardt, and he swung, and as soon as he hit the first one, he healed the second and the third and the fourth, and then as soon as he hits the second one, the first one gets healed, and then when he hits the third one, the second one gets healed again, and when he hits the fourth, the third one gets healed. So basically, you're just constantly healing all of the enemies in the area. So avoid any AoE primary attacks and avoid other AoE type effects as well. The reason why I use McCree and Hanzo and not Ashe is because her primary attack will work, but her ultimate is really bad because, again, it's probably going to target wrong stuff, just like Torbjorn's turret would often target the wrong thing. And also, her TNT can't be used at all because it just heals all the enemies to full every time you use it. So, single target damage is what you want in this game mode. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I do have a bunch of Overwatch Archives event loot box codes that I'm going to be giving out. These were provided by Blizzard, so thank you very much to them. There's going to be a couple of different ways that I'm going to give out these loot box codes. The first is through my Instagram account. I'm simply going to post images that have a loot box code on them. It's going to be first come, first serve. Whoever sees it on Instagram, go to Battle.net, put in the code, you get the loot boxes. That's it. I'm also going to be handling a more standard giveaway where you will be able to enter on my Discord server. All of the rules for how that's going to work will be posted in the Discord server itself. So all of those rules, that's going to be a 24 loot box code for that one. And again, if you want to check out the Instagram or the Discord, those links are going to be down below. So those are going to be the best heroes and strategies for the Archives event challenge modes. Again, if you do the Storm Rising one, expect people to complain about Brigida. It's gonna happen, okay? You can try to explain the strategy to them, you can direct them to this video, or just try to make your own group and do it that way, because people are gonna complain. But trust me, I've used the Brigida strategy. She makes that game mode easy, super easy. You can just roll right through it if you do it right. Good luck, and also remember, loot box codes, all that stuff, links for that down below. A big thanks to all the Paragons and other channel members for all your support. If you'd like to become one and grab some cool rewards, click the join button down below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, drop a like before you leave. And remember, always blame the controller because it's never your fault.